Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're playing the new Power Shift seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which every unit in our starting deck gets its power set to its provision cost. That means low power, high provision cost cards are much stronger than usual, making this deck extremely effective. So let's go give it a look. So today we'll be playing a Scoia'Tael Precision Strike deck that focuses on lots of tall removal to get rid of all the tall cards our opponents will be playing, and lots of thinning to help us more consistently draw into those types of cards. So, as is often the case for Power Shift decks, we'll have a bunch of Geralts for all that tall removal. Also have Schirru, which, because many of those Geralts have 10 base power, and that means Schirru will be a great way to answer those cards. Just need to be a little bit careful that you don't accidentally activate Schirru on yourself there, so be mindful of the timing of playing him. But other Geralts. Then we also have the key finisher for round 3 will be Triss Meteor Shower, either to boost our big base power units or damage our opponent's big base power units. The other things that are unique to Scoia'Tael is that we have the Precision Strike, which means we can use that to get out what will be 4 base power Brokilon Sentinels out from our deck, which it gives us pretty solid value, not only from points on the board, but also a thinning standpoint from our leader ability, making us more consistently drawing into those big cards in round 2 and round 3. Then we also have some high value thinning from cards like Roach, which is of course 9 power in this event, and also Best Boy, which is 8 power in this event. Then we have Brehen is another Scoia'Tael specific source of removal. Need to wait a little bit before you can use him, unless your opponent plays at least 5 units in a row, but that is another way to get rid of some of your opponent's biggest cards. And then we also rock a little bit of poison with a couple of Dryad Rangers, combined with a couple of Forest Whisperers, which can give us another way to remove some of our opponent's biggest cards. And with that, that means that when our opponent plays anything big, we almost always have an answer and add Eyck to the list of cards that can get rid of the big units that our opponent plays as well. So that's pretty much all there is to it. You can also throw in a little bit of additional damage with stuff like the Dol Blathanna Bomber and the Dwarven Skirmisher, and even start off a round with the Peasant Militia, which in this event, because there are so many big cards with deploy abilities, is a very solid engine to play early while you're waiting for your opponent to play some of those big cards that you want to remove. And that's about it. Just tons and tons of tall removal. So let's go see it in action. Alright, so going up against monsters here, and they'll go first. Okay, so this hand is already a little bit concerning because we have a lot of cards that we want to keep in our deck that we can thin out later, including Best Boy, Roach, and also the Sentinel. The thing is that Roach and Best Boy could come out at any point in time during round 1, 2, or 3. I mean, Roach we do have some control over, whereas the Sentinel is a little bit trickier because it does require that we set it up with our leader ability. So if we have the Sentinel in hand, then that means we just can't use our leader ability. So I think we actually prioritize that. And then maybe we get rid of you. Okay, I was just hoping we weren't going to get that second Sentinel, in which case we would still have bricked our round 1 hand. So obviously we don't want to play Best Boy from hand. But we can mulligan him back into our deck in round 2 or round 3, and we should still be fine. Okay, so they're Blood Scent, Neckarat. You have to assume they're a full-blown Vampires deck. Which I think means, did we have one of our dwarf dudes in hand? I thought we did for a second there. No, apparently not. Okay. So, yeah, this is actually a pretty important engine for them. Which, for what it's worth... Okay. Case in point. This is why we wanted to have our leader ability available to us in round 1. Because this, I think, is going to be pretty helpful. Get rid of an important engine, thin out those cards from our deck, giving us additional value, and getting an engine on the board that immediately gets boosted from playing those Brokilon Sentinels. Now they're going to go from Warbleed, of course. Okay. Now it gets a little bit trickier. So we don't have enough cards yet to get the full value out of the Bomber. What can we do with Decree? Obviously nothing for Eyck to go after yet. I'd really like to go Quen into Professional is the highest value play, or potentially Eyck. Oh, well, can't use Geralt to get him, though. So this might just be a knowingly suboptimal Bomber on this turn. Because ultimately this is not a critically important card that we maximize the value out of, rather optimize around the big tall removal stuffs. And it does, of course, still give the boost to the Peasant Militia as well. So it's not completely without merit. Okay, Queen of the Night for more bleed, and now they do have 2 units next to each other, so that at least opens up Red Haze. Granted, now that you've taken some damage, it's not great value there. So, let's see. Alternatively, you are a multiple of 3. So, we could get extremely aggressive and go Royal Decree into Quen, into Professional, and immediately destroy you and get huge tempo. That's, I would argue, overreacting, but, I mean, we could. We could. Otherwise, yeah, most other stuff, basically, otherwise, it's probably going to have to be Red Haze, which is pretty bad value. Alright, this is, I don't love it. Because this is, I would argue, very much overreacting. And it's still not great value on Professional, because, you know, he can go and get something much bigger than just a 6, but we still have a lot of tall removal remaining here, with Igni, Schirru, base Geralt, and Brehen, so... Okay, yes, that's basically what we were hoping for, was get really aggressive and more or less just have them decide, nope, there's no way that we want to be playing in round 1. And now that puts us in an interesting place here in round 2. We can obviously get rid of Best Boy in hand. That's very nice. We've 1 poison card. We'd like to have 2, so we can actually get the removal from the poison. We are going to go first here in this round, so that is a little bit tricky because we have mostly cards that react to the things that our opponent puts on the board. So that's a little bit tough. Things like Red Haze, obviously can't even play those. I mean, we could discard them. But, we could try to push 2-0, or we could try to bleed out some of their better cards here. Okay, we do get our second source of poison. And if we had a third source of poison, we could just throw away one of these poison cards and still have enough for removal, but obviously if we split these 2 up, then suddenly we don't have enough to get rid of one of their cards. So, I think once again we might just opt for the Bomber as our throwaway here. It is definitely one of our weaker cards. So is the Skirmisher, but if we play it here, then we don't get armor on it, and therefore we don't get any value. We just can't use the order ability. So I think we'd rather throw you away here. And we just see what happens. You know, we'll start off by playing low-value cards, but if it seems like we have an opportunity to push harder, then we can. Otherwise, we'll see if we can trade some of our weaker cards for some of their better cards and increase our probability of success for the next round. Okay, so what they are almost certainly trying to do is just load up on as much bleed as possible with things like Neckarat and all their other vampires to set up a really huge Regis in round 3. We should have last say, because we won round 1. So that's going to be huge, because that, I mean, even if they put something like a Defender down, we can remove a Defender with base Geralt, and then, or we could just Igni through the Defender, to be honest. So, I think that definitely helps us, or even Brehen could work around a Defender, I believe, so not too worried about that. But by keeping round 1 short, it actually meant that there's Best Boy coming out, because we didn't get him in round 1. But yeah, by keeping round 1 short, that meant they had less turns in which to give us bleed. So, for that reason, Regis hasn't had quite as much time to power up. There is perhaps a case to be made for pushing harder in this round. Okay, that's a pretty solid play. There's a case to be made for pushing harder in this round for that reason and just trying to basically force them to play a suboptimal Regis, but because we already have the answers to Regis, or at least should have the answers to Regis with our various Geralts, shouldn't be a big issue. Schirru can be a little bit tricky, though. Especially if we're thinking about using him in the same round as all of our Geralts, because we don't really want to destroy other units with 10 power if we have a bunch of units with 10 power on the board. If we were to play him now, obviously it's proactive. There isn't really anything on 10 power for us to go after. Could start to poison. Maybe we'll poison the Toad Prince. Maybe we do that. Because it's decent value. And we had some concern about, let's go for you first, for your Harmony. With some concern about splitting up our poison cards. So rather than risking only playing one in this round and not playing the other, and, you know, not being able to actually get poison removal, let's just guarantee we get the poison removal here. Actually could make the case for getting rid of the Neckarat. I don't know, poison perhaps would be overkill for that, but going melee row damage to remove it would have been pretty solid. Again, they're trying to get as much bleed as possible here. Yes, they could then resort to their lead ability, I suppose, but... That's interesting. 6-point boost on the Neckarat. It's not that valuable. And if we go here, we retake the lead. Honestly, probably could have made a pretty strong case for red hazing first to get rid of the Neckarat and then removing with poison. So red haze can get a little bit tricky if your opponent does not place big units next to each other. Catachin. Which row? Yeah. Okay, so we could opt to pass here. We could. And then we'd be on even cards going into round 3. And that would... I mean, we've traded mostly small cards on our side for... Catachin was a decent card for them. Toad Prince was a decent card for them. So I think we've still traded our weaker cards for their stronger cards. That's not a terrible thing to do. We'd like to still keep our tall removal for the most part for round 3, though. We should draw into more good stuff going into round 3 because we thinned out most of our weak stuff. Still some risk that we end up with only one poison card, I suppose. But I think we probably draw the line here. Okay, so they'll win round 2. Okay, and we do draw into both sources of poison. That was our biggest risk in round 3, but we are fine now. So then, red haze is my biggest concern here, because we could probably get decent value out of one of them, but getting 2 might be a little tricky. So let's try getting rid of one of you. Dwarven Skirmisher. Some risk here that makes it tougher for us to keep things in base Geralt range. What are we still missing here? Eyck would be the key thing we're missing. Otherwise, it's Peasant Militia. Honestly, I think either one of those we would prefer. Peasant Militia obviously smaller than Eyck, but I think if we lead off with you, gives us some nice time to wait and see what our opponent plays and more time to prioritize the better targets for us to get rid of with things like poison and Geralts and what have you. Yeah, Schirru is actually, I think that's the biggest risk here. I am kind of concerned about Schirru because that has potential to brick a bit. Okay, but if... Oh, it's so close. If the Fledder gets up to 10, that would be really nice. But I'm not sure that's going to happen. Otherwise, you could be a base Geralt removal target, but I'm assuming they're going to hide Regis behind a defender, in which case we want one source of removal for the defender and another source of removal for Regis himself. I assume he'll still be in Igni range. Otherwise, and we could go Brehen as well, gives us a little bit of additional flexibility. Could go Red Haze here, remove Garcane. Otherwise, I was thinking, maybe Garcane. I mean, this goes up by 1 every turn, so it's a little more predictable, a little bit easier to set Schirru up for that, whereas Fledder very well may go past 10 points on their next turn, so this might not be a viable Schirru target after all. So, alright, we'll take our chances. Take our chances on finding a better Schirru target. But that could backfire. Alright, Bruck's, likely to go up a reasonable bit as well. Maybe not as high as 10, though. So again, Schirru's going to be a little bit tricky, and as expected, the Fledder has gone past a 10. That being said, this is going to continue to get bigger, so it's not a terrible idea to use this as a base Geralt target. Does mean at that point that we are relying on either Igni to remove the Regis through a defender. I mean, they might just put him in a row by himself, in which case that's really the biggest risk. That could be tricky. And then we could save poison, but they're probably going to use it on their last turn, in which case we won't be able to use poison. Yeah, tell you what, we're going to go poison on the Fledder. That's what we're going to go for. Because it takes one more turn to do this, so it takes us 2 turns in total to remove with the poison, which means we can't really remove Regis with the poison. So I don't want to be relying on these 2. I don't want these to be our final 2 removal cards when we're going up against that big base power on Regis. I think that would get us in a lot of trouble. Also, for what it's worth, we do also have Triss, which we'd like to use as a finisher, either for generating points on our side with our big base power units, or... Okay, this is perfect time for Schirru. Let's get rid of Detloff. Let's just get rid of Detloff. Especially because... Oh, no, you're going to die to the... Blood Moon? Do you have a deploy? No, this is technically not deploy. So yeah, you're going to die to the bleed. I think we just do this. Okay, so we did still get decent value out of Schirru in that case. Again, we could have waited, but we are very close to having to play 10 base power cards and having Schirru run the risk of backfiring, which I believe he still does. I know he got reworked a little while ago to no longer destroy himself, but I think he can still destroy your own units, so definitely want to be careful of that. Brehen now is active, so anything that they play in this spot we can remove there, but we don't know for certain if they're going to play something big there, so we need to be a little bit careful in that case. Honestly, this might eventually get up to 10 power. But, okay. So... Alright, this is now getting tricky. No row with 3 units in it yet. Nothing big enough for base Geralt. Triss Meteor Shower, we might be forced into playing this on this turn. Igni, there's obviously nothing in Igni range, and we need to wait for the Regis. So I think, by default, it has to be Triss. In which case... best option is to go range row and boost ourselves. Obviously, that is suboptimal. But that is kind of the situation that we were expecting was, at some point, we were going to have something be a little bit suboptimal. They may have Triss as a big finisher on their side, and they may be able to get more value out of her, if not for our removal here. Because if we get rid of all their big stuff, then Triss can't get much value. There's Unseen Elder. That's not a bad target for us to go after with something like base Geralt. They do have Devotion. Okay, I'm not really sure we ever saw anything to suggest they wouldn't have Devotion. You'd think they would have played Unseen Elder earlier in that case. But the earlier we get rid of him, the better. On the other hand, now we need to be mindful of... right now, the only thing that can remove him would be base Geralt, and if we do that, then we run the risk of Igni bricking and potentially Brehen bricking as well. So, I think we have to, though. Think we have to, because otherwise we're playing Brehen or Igni right now, and they're definitely bricking in that case. So we know they don't have a Geralt, for what it's worth. I guess that is the one thing that the Unseen Elder proved to us. Okay, they have 3 units in this row, so Brehen is at least possible. Obviously, not very good value in this case, but it's something. Oriana can get big. Okay, I think... let's see. 21, 17. If we remove you, you're going to be 14. That's going to be your smallest row, which means... I think in either case, if we play Brehen here, remove the Ekimar, obviously it's not great, but it's something. And then I think regardless of which row they play Regis in, we should still be able to remove it with Igni. I think they'll still be in Igni range. Might even be able to remove Oriana if that happens to be bigger, but I don't think she will be. So I think we go this route. We know they don't have an Igni, so we don't need to worry about having 2 cards that'll be on 8 power. Wouldn't be in Igni range anyway. Yeah, no, you're going to be just below the Igni threshold, so we really want you to play Regis here, and I think they have to. Yeah, there he is. He's huge, as expected, but we knew he was coming, and we knew we should be ready to remove. Now, is it enough, though, is the other question, of course, and we're about to find out. Yes, even after the bleed, it just barely does the trick. Alright, so going up against Skellige here, and they'll go first. Okay, so we have several cards that we want to keep in our deck so that we can thin them out later, and that includes both of these Brokilon Sentinels, so I think we do want to mulligan both of them. We run some risk of drawing into either Roach or Best Boy here. I think we just have to accept that possibility, and we don't. Okay, so that's good. And in general, we have a lot of cards that require our opponent play something first. We could lead off with Peasant Militia if they don't play anything that we want to interact with, so that does give us some flexibility at least. Okay, it's Croc. Now that's a card that I would not mind getting rid of. Question is, how do we want to make that happen? Because pure damage-wise, we can get, what, 5 here, plus an additional 2 here if we went the melee row. Could go for just pure poison. Obviously, that takes a little bit of time to make that happen. But that's not terrible value. It's just a little bit slow. Could go straight into, no, Royal Decree into base Geralt could do it as well. Eyck takes a turn too. I think Eyck probably gets destroyed by Croc before he can actually use his ability. So I think we go with the poison. tell you the truth. I think we go this route. Because I think whatever they play next to Croc is likely to destroy the card we play here. We don't really care about Force Whisper staying on the board. It's not particularly a high value card outside of its deployability. And Croc just has so much long-term value that I think it makes a lot of sense to go the poison route. Okay, that does complicate things, though. That does complicate things significantly. Ooh. Alright, hold on, though. So, if we're willing to go and ditch the poison, we could go melee row, Dryad Ranger, drop you down to a 5, and then we have enough damage to remove Covenant of Steel with our leader ability at that point. That is an option. That does mean that we'd have to find a different source of removal for Croc himself, which is not out of the question. But, yeah, I think we still go that route. It hurts a little bit to basically brick that first poison, but I think it's still worth it. Would have also liked to have gotten Peasant Militia down here before we did that, but I think once Croc was on the board, there was just no chance to safely set up Peasant Militia, because this would have gotten boosted from all of our deploy abilities, but yeah, just don't have the time to afford that when putting stuff next to Croc immediately removes things. That's not bad. That is not a bad idea. Okay, Croc is now accessible, at the very least, which means always goes after our lowest unit, right? So Eyck is comparatively safer to play now, and might still be a reasonable way to get rid of Croc. Yeah. I think we give that a shot. There is still a chance they have a way to remove him. I mean, if they're Rage of the Sea, but they're playing mostly pirates at the moment, which is a little confusing. Not entirely sure what to make of that. Because Bjorn could definitely get rid of Eyck, which would normally be something you... Well, I guess you don't need to put him next to Croc, but either way, if they have Bjorn, they can use him to get rid of Eyck. And that is exactly what they're going to do. Okay, so yeah. Well, yes. They did have the card that I expected, sort of. Just still a very confusing deck that doesn't make a lot of sense. So we could now... See, they're on Bloodthirst. They are on Bloodthirst 2. Eesh. Which makes that a little tricky to get rid of. I mean, we could get rid of you with the Skirmisher. It means we won't get the Order ability later on, but that might be worth it, to be honest. I think that probably is worth it. Otherwise, we'd have to Royal Decree into something. And even then, I mean, Schirru would have been an answer for Croc, I suppose. But I think we go and just get rid of you. Another Corsair, which next to Croc is valuable. Okay. So, at this point, I mean, they actually were only 1 point behind, and they played one more card than us, which is not bad. They have more potential if they do get rid of that Dwarven Skirmisher, which is going to be the target for Croc. Again, we could Schirru. We could Schirru. I would prefer to go highest value play with Royal Decree would be Quen into base Geralt. Or later on, we could even go Brehen, but his adrenaline hasn't kicked in yet. What if we... Let's play it slow here. It's a little bit late for the Militia, but I think we'll still do it just because it does inch us ahead of them once again, forcing them to play further, and gives us the possibility of a higher value Royal Decree later on. Obviously, the longer we let Croc stick around, the more value he's getting, which is the counter argument, which is making it just hard to gauge what the best way to deal with him is. We could remove Holger with Red Haze, which is not enough to answer them immediately, though. He is also a potential target for Geralt Professional. Let's see, we're on Adrenaline 4 here if we were to play, so we need one more turn before Brehen becomes an option. Because it'd be nice to go Quen into Brehen or Quen into Geralt, but Brehen's a little bit harder to set up, so if we can get Brehen value, I'd kind of like to use it. They are in Igni range, though, for what it's worth. I think we do that, to be honest. I think we just do that. And we will not be in Igni range ourselves, so I think that's fine. So, yes, it was largely a question of how do we want to answer Croc, because we let him stay around longer than perhaps we should have. Obviously, they put the defender down, and we got rid of the defender, but... Okay. Now that he is gone, how do they respond? Sucris. He is removable with Geralt Professional. That is an option. Do want to be mindful of us at least holding on to some of our big cards for later rounds. We did do a lot of thinning with our leader ability, so we should be drawing into most of these things in a later round, but Red Haze is so close, but not quite enough for us to catch them, especially once that rain kicks in. 2 turns of this gives us 10 points of value, so if we're willing to go a card down to win round 1, they'll be at 17, we'll drop 2 points to 19. That does still work. I think we accept that that is potentially the best course of action here. They might pass now. If they don't, then we can get more aggressive. Now, are they trying to do Sucris plus Ernachad? They are. Wow. Okay. I think that's fine. Honestly, I mean, first of all, we can still win. We could go Royal Decree into Quen, which survives Ernachad, and then go base Geralt to remove him, or even oh no, can't do Schirru then, because he's not a Witcher, although Schirru theoretically could destroy. Yeah, I mean, or we just pass now and say, okay, you just committed both Croc and Ernachad plus Sucris, which were probably both of your win conditions. I think we can justify this, though. We go Quen. Survives Ernachad. Then we go base Geralt, who destroys Ernachad. And now we can possibly win on even here. And they have committed so much to win round 1. Yes, we did start to break out some big things, but I think that's still worth it. We have Geralt's Professional, which can still give us a lot of value. And we do still have some other good cards as well. So we'll win round 1 on even. Okay, so now we have 2 options. We could either dry pass, or 3 options, really. We could dry pass now, force them to go a card down, and give us card advantage in double last say in round 3. That's not bad. We could push here and either just try to play small stuff like the Bomber and Red Haze, and try to get them to play bigger stuff so that we have stronger cards remaining in round 3 than they do, or we could just try to push all the way. I don't love what we have here, because we would want 2 sources of poison at the very least. I think short round Militia is not great. We do have 2 sources of poison. So if we were to push, what we would do is we'd go brick the Bomber first, poison whatever they play first, and then Brehen plus Geralt Professional. I still think we might prefer a longer round. There's some risk of what? Fukusia would probably be what they might try to break out in round 3, but they can't bring back Croc, they can't bring back Ernachad. So they could bring back Sucris, but that still doesn't protect against Geralt. Could bring back Bjorn, could bring back Covenant of Steel. Those are not great win conditions in and of themselves, though. So yeah, I think we just... Given how much they invested in round 1, and still were not able to win, I think just forcing them to go a card down and giving us double last say in round 3 may be sufficient here to seal the win. Corsair is obviously not a great card, but it's mostly just that we're forcing them to go a card down. Okay, so now we draw into the Militia, which with a longer round 3 could still be decent, and it does buy us a little bit of time, is the nice thing, because otherwise we'd probably be forced into playing a very early set of poison on basically whatever they play first, and similarly the Dol Blathanna Bomber. I think we can probably still do better here. I'm a little bit concerned about Schirru having a target, but we have already played all of our own 10s, so we have no risk of this completely backfiring on us. We just have a risk of him being a 10-point unit and nothing else. And Triss is definitely a big pickup here. What else are we missing? I think this is probably what we're going to stick with. Okay, they go Scenario. Okay. So I think we still start with the Peasant Militia. The weirdest thing is that Rage of the Sea, I was expecting more rain, not pirates. Would have thought this deck would have been Onslaught, so that was what confused me a lot in round 1. So, obviously this is a valuable card, but with this scenario, they can get it back if it gets destroyed once they play their next pirates, and they seemingly have a whole bunch of pirates. So, oh, and then it will be a 10 once it returns, doesn't it? So that does mean, right, because they increase the base power by 5, so that can be a Schirru target. And then once it does come, either increase the base power or come back, then there's no way to re-trigger that. So yeah, that gives us the Schirru target we're looking for. So let's start with you. And it also means this is not a great target for them to go after with that ship. Okay, so Drift was right. We imagined they were going to do some stuff to get back big cards. Although, to be fair, that does mean they can get something a little bit bigger than what I was anticipating. Wait. Yeah, no, that's Croc. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, well, I was, what, basing on 9 provisions, which is not totally fair. I think we wait. Croc is a 10. I don't really think they're going to have much in the way of boosts. That was summoned, so it didn't trigger the scenario. Assuming they play a pirate on their next turn, you're a 10, you're a 10. You can't come back anymore, you can't come back anymore. We play Schirru, we remove them both. They've lost their win, what is probably their win conditions for that round. That means we don't want to play the Bomber here, though, because that would brick things. We probably don't want to play... Are they going to bring back Ernachad and make it so we can't use Schirru? We might actually need to play Schirru here. But if we do, they could... The right play would be to leader ability and drop Schirru down to a 9. That's actually really tricky. That's actually very tricky. I think we take our chances. I think we have to Schirru here, because I'm concerned that they're going to use something to bring back Ernachad. Oh, actually, they also can Croc, which is a very obvious target on Schirru. Okay. Schirru would have been absolutely amazing, but they just had just enough answers to complicate getting Schirru down that now it may be very less effective. Okay. That was what I expected them to do for an answer. Now we can... we can remove you, but you're going to come back as a 10. Okay, so in the end, this was potentially going to actually be our best card, but it turned into a bit of a much, much weaker card. They had more answers than I originally was going to give them credit for, but... darn. Is that a big enough issue that they have now won this match? Can still, you're gonna get up to 10s, which means you're not professionalable. We hit you, you drop to an 8, which is still not that useful. Can remove with poison, can remove with Brehen later. I think that means we have to do this. Okay, another long ship that's gonna destroy you. This is looking like it's going to be a melee row Triss to hit their melee row. Still have not played another pirate yet, so I'm waiting for them to power up this Drakkar before we react to it. Need one more turn before we can do anything with Brehen. I'd like for that to go after Croc, but then that means if it's not Brehen here, it's really not Geralt Professional. We'd have to go for the poison removal. I mean, this removes both of you, which, I mean, this is only temporary removal, so it's real. In essence, it's really just getting rid of you. Does that mean it's a melee Triss right now? I'd rather it not be that. Otherwise, we're removing one of you with poison. I think we might have removed one of you with poison. Or we... It's you, or you, once you get your base power... Do you get healed, or just increase base power up to 10? I don't remember, because that could get you into professional range. Yeah, this is getting a lot more complicated than I thought it would have. I thought it was just going to be a simple play Schirru. To be fair, they didn't end up getting Ernachad back. So waiting on Schirru was the right play, and then we could have just, well, we would have to have waited a long time, because they still have not gotten the Drakkar to get purified. But now we can use Brehen to remove Croc. So that is one of the things we were waiting to do. So we will go that route. Melusine, now that is going to be Geralt Professional target on this turn. Does need to be melee row, right? Yeah. Okay, this is their last play. We do have the double last say, which is probably going to be the deciding factor here. It's Drake or Turtle. They just never evolved. This Drakkar never triggered the last round of their scenario. And yes, eventually, Schirru would have been absolutely amazing, getting rid of both Croc and you, I guess, again, never the Drakkar, but, it's just such an odd deck, where all the things that we thought they would do, they did, but slightly differently, which really threw me off. But we should be fine here, I think. If we go, I guess we'll just get poison removal with the Ranger, then we'll finish with Triss Meteor Shower, and we'll do the math, figure out which row is better. So we go ranged row, although to be fair, melee row is better. Remove you either way, but in this case, we line up more units for Triss on our side if we'd like to. I think either way it should work. I mean, Triss with the body alone should be sufficient. So we'll just boost ourselves here, I think. So an odd match, but we will still take the win. So there's a look at a Scoia'Tael Precision Strike deck for the new Power Shift seasonal event. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions we should experiment with next. And take a look at our Power Shift playlist to see previous decks that we've used in this event as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.